Super good. All right, so I wanted to welcome everybody to today's webinar where we're talking about how to unlock your creativity with brand standards. If we haven't met, I'm Nicole Morton. I'm the Director of Marketing Operations here at Keystone Click. And with me is Becky, our Marketing Administrative Assistant and all-around brand wizard.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. We are thrilled to have you here with us today. We know that building a strong brand is essential for small to medium-sized business, well, all businesses. And we're here to help you navigate the exciting world of brand guidelines. All right. So by the end of the webinar today, you're going to have a better understanding of the importance of brand consistency and why it's important to have a brand guidebook, the 7 must-have components in your brand guidelines, and action steps that you can use to implement in your business to get started creating your own brand guidebook.
Yep. It's not just for big businesses. All right, so let's get a running start. Let's talk about brand consistency and why it matters. We've talked about in many webinars previous about how it is the foundation of your branding. So however you feel about him, Jeff Bezos is famously quoted as saying, your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room, meaning that the way you show up, the way you connect, the way you communicate, trains your audience how you want them to think and speak about you when you are not in their presence. So it's extremely important that you're consistent in all of your digital presence. We've discussed that the brand consistency is at the very, very core of your business. It's how you build trust. It's how you build recognition with your target audience.
So let's talk about the most important tool you can use to make sure that your brand looks and sounds consistent no matter where you are and what you're doing, your brand guidebook. If you're not familiar with a brand guidebook, it's a compilation of documents that ensures brand consistency in your communication and visual brand elements. It provides the rules for using those components and shares use cases and how those components should be implemented. For instance, when and how you use your logo in print or online, and what words can and can't be used in your customer communications.
So when you break it down, there's 7 essential components of your brand guidebook, and they include things like your logo, your brand voice, the fonts that you use, your color palette, iconography that you use, how and when you use your photos, and even templates to make things consistent across all of your brand communication. So let's take a deeper dive into those things now, starting with
logo. All right, first and foremost is your brand logo. It acts as the face of your brand. It's there when you're not. It is the way to show up everywhere all the time with certain guidelines. And it's the shortcut to your brand, what people think of you as. Your brand guidebook should have instructions on primary and secondary versions of your logo, what they are, when to use them, when and how to use color variation, and when not to, and instructions about logo sizing and spacing. When Keystone Click recently underwent a complete brand refresh, this was one of the very first things that we worked on. So you can see that we have different versions of our logo, the full brand name and the signature K, and different color variations depending on print or digital use and color or black and white. So for our brand guidelines, we have the green is the #1 version of the K that you should use. So we want to use the K whenever possible in the green. So either the light or the dark. If it's black and white, we're going to use the white or the black K, but we like to default to the greens.
So the next element, which is very near and dear to my heart, is your brand voice. So identifying, describing, and codifying your brand voice. And if you remember for some of the previous webinars that we've been on together, it's the sum total of your tone, the language that you use, your vocabulary and jargon, including things that you do and do not say in your outbound communication. things like messaging maps. So you talk about, you know, your pillars of communication and what you want to be known for. And this just ensures consistency across all your brand communication. For Keystone Click, our brand voice, if we were to describe as, you know, friendly, helpful, but professional, knowledgeable, and encouraging. So those are things that all tie back to our brand values as a company, and what we want to communicate outwards to all of our audience. Meaning, you know, digital presence is not just reserved for, you know, higher echelon and enterprise level companies. We can help you make sure that you have an online presence that's perfect for you.
All right. Yeah, go ahead.
Of brand fonts. So this, it just, aside from color, this is the most funnest thing that you can do. There are so many thousands upon thousands of fonts that are out there, and pretty sure that you can find a couple that look great together and align with your brand's personality. You want to make sure that they're consistent across all of your communication for things like in print, and on your website for things like headlines and subheadings and body copy, and, you know, the sizing and relationships between each of those. So again, when we went through our brand refresh, we picked two different fonts, one that's a serif font and a sans serif font, and we are consistent with, we use this particular font in our headlines, and it's this size and it's this boldness, this line weight, when you're using subheadings and body copy.
Yeah, and you also want to think about, why are you going to use serif versus sans serif? Serif is often attributed to like news or something very business-like. So if you're a really serious industry, maybe serif is a really good font for you to use for body copy or headlines. For sans serif, like ourselves, for our headlines and our body copy, it's a lot more open-minded, it's a lot more creative. So knowing kind of your own brand personality and taking that into account when choosing fonts. All right, so your brand's color palette, yay! It's arguably the most impactful component of your branding. Colors evoke emotions, so choose very wisely. You should have a cohesive color palette that aligns with your brand's personality, including primary colors, secondary colors, and some accent colors, along with how they'd be used in print and online. All right, so some of the world's most iconic brands are defined by their color palette. You can argue that if the Starbucks cup wasn't green or the Golden Arches were, I don't know, like purple, their food and beverages might not taste the same, right? That's logic. Some companies even make the brand color a part of their marketing messaging. Like UPS, what can brown do for you? Brown often is seen as serious, as stable, kind of like a tree trunk, like really strong, has a lot of wisdom. It's been there for a long time. So you know that UPS is going to be dependable. For Starbucks, like green, like there's growth. It's kind of tranquil. It's fresh and attributes to nature. The Golden Arches and that yellowish orange, it's very attention getting. It attributes to energy, happiness. And then the Target bullseye, it's red. We all know it attracts attention. It's a harbinger of strength and power. And then with the bullseye itself, it's almost kind of like a hypnotizing, you will buy from Target.
I will buy from Target,
Yes,
indeed.
I mean, who doesn't?
Honestly, you go in for a gallon of milk and you come out with an entire bedroom suite. I don't know
Yep.
how they do it. You know, in addition to the you know, the emotions of a single color, it's interesting how brands will use color interactivity within their logos. And we have just two examples here, FedEx and Google. So the way that colors interact with one another, specifically where they lie on the concept of the color wheel. So if they're colors that are opposite one another, for instance, FedEx, they're royally blue purple and they're kind of brighter orange, are opposite from one another on the color wheel. So when you pair those brands together, they clash, but in a way that is very energetic. and exciting. You'll see some brands that, for instance, in laundry detergent, you'll see like brighter colors that, oranges and whites and blues that work together, or in, brands that are really exciting, like energy drinks and candies that maybe lean into that red green opposition where the most tension happens. So it can be really exciting, or it can kind of tie into your brand's personality, like a Google who relies on primary colors. So the basics of the color wheel, red, green, and blue, from which all other colors are built, conveys stability and reliability. But then the little green L is kind of a teasing to like the potential of what you can achieve by using their products. So there's a lot of subtle communication that happens with choosing your color palette.
Yeah, and there's also, it's really important to keep accessibility in mind. So
Yes.
having your colors work together, not against yourself. So maybe like a lighter background and a darker font, or you don't want to not be able to read what is on the page. So if you have like a dark green and purple, like you're not going to be able to read that, and it's not accessible to anyone, but especially people who have vision problems. So you want to make sure that you're choosing your palette wisely from the standpoint of just readability.
That's really an important point. Another visual shorthand that you need to make sure are in your brand guidelines are icons. So again, they're a visual shorthand to your brand recognition. And then you should also have in your guidelines examples of how those should be used. When we look at some of the most iconic brands that have been in advertising history, luxury brands, and especially brands like automobile in those kinds of verticals, and even some electronics do this very, very well. But even brands that you interact with on a day-to-day basis, like a Nike or a Shell, you don't need to see the brand name. And frankly, you don't even need to see the brand colors. I specifically chose black and white icons for this slide because you don't need to see the red and yellow of the Shell to know that it's Shell oil. You don't need to see the chromy silver of Mercedes-Benz to know what it is. Um, these icons are just immediately activate the part in your brain that associates the relationship that you have with that brand. When you see Nike, you're inspired, you're motivated. When you see Apple, it's modern and what happens with technology. When you see the Warner Brothers Shield logo, it's entertainment. You may even associate it with some of the Warner Brothers individual characters. You may be a fan of the Looney Tunes or even some of the DC universe. So all of these things, all of these tiny images, these shapes associate an entire relationship that you have with a particular brand.
Yeah. And a lot of these are used as monograms, not just like fashion, but
Oh goodness, yes.
like the Apple and like even the Warner Brothers, like they'll put that on a poster and you'll know right away that's Warner Brothers. All right, so brand iconography is also super important. So here at Keystone Click, when we were rebranding, the sentence we kind of went with was chaotic genius, and that kind of plays into a lot of the iconography we use. So it's whimsical, it's smart, it's sharp, it's fun, which contributes to a lot of the images that we use on our website, in all of our templates, in everything you see from Keystone Click. So we have the roller. So we see that and we know right away for Keystone Click, that's web dev. It's making your website look beautiful, but also efficient. We have the telephone, which shows that, customer service is very important to us. We monitor it all the time. I am the one answering the phone, so I can attribute to that. And then we have the cute little robot, which is a lot of people's favorites here at Keystone Click, that attributes to marketing automation, which is something that we use a lot and we try to talk about a lot because it's just really an amazing tool that can make things super efficient for you and your company. All right, so along with iconography, photos are also, they also create a powerful emotional connection with your audience. You can build a media library with a mix of like brand and stock photography, whether they're purchased or royalty free, but that's very important that you know the difference.
Yes.
Include guidelines for use, like when and how to use staff headshots, or whether, you can apply a filter to this. If it's not royalty free, you might need to watch out for that. And then kind of what circumstances you can use and not use all of those things.
Mhm. So, for staff headshots in particular, we have different occasions that we need to use Lori's image, our fearless leader. But depending on the context, is how we're going to choose what photo is going to be used. So, her knockout white background headshots, we could present it as being fairly casual or a lot more professional and buttoned up. We can also use it as slice of life photography. Lori, one of her foundational values is education. So she's often conducting speaking engagements for webinars and conferences and classes. And so, if we want to talk about Lori's expertise, we're going to use a shot that's more like that. But if we want to talk about how we really want to make digital education accessible to our customer base. So we might use the image like Lori just having a casual cup of coffee here in the third ward. So, it's the same person and it's roughly the same image, but used in four very different ways depending on the context. And our brand guidelines have an outline of when we're supposed to use this photography and when and how.
Mm-hmm.
So finally, you can use all of this branding to create templates for your most unique documents. Just like we created a photo library, we also have a template library for things like letterheads or proposals, presentations, newsletters, and all your other content documents. You can create simple pages in Google Sheets or Word or Microsoft, or is it Apple's Pages? I can never use
Pages and Apple, yeah.
I know. Well, you can have your logo as part of your letterhead. You can have icons in your footers. You can use the page settings to automatically select which the appropriate font for your headlines, subtext, or subheadlines and body copy. You can also create presentation templates in Google Slides or PowerPoint or Keynote, whatever your platform of choice is, that have already built in the template with your colors, your logo, and icons that are built in to be able to pull into slide contents as needed. And that way, everything is consistent throughout all of your communication tools. So if you're ready to get started today, so here's some action steps that you can implement immediately with your team. So first, you want to define your brand identity. And we've talked about in previous webinars about how that is your mission, your vision, your values, your offerings, what you stand for. You're going to want to do a quick assessment of all of your brand assets with your visual and print assets, and find where there are some holes so that you can create what's missing. Most importantly, you want to document your guidelines so that they're accessible to everybody on your team with clear instructions for use. And then finally, you're going to want to educate your team on how to use them. So this could be workshops or a conference with all of the team to talk
A
about
lunch and learn.
Lunch and learns are the best. And all of this will ensure consistency across all the aspects of your business.
Yep. All right, so let's open the floor to questions. Please feel free to ask any questions you have in the chat and we'll do our best to answer them. All right.
All right, let's see. Here's a good question that says, how can I determine the right fonts and colors that align with my brand's personality? Are there any tools or resources you recommend for choosing the right ones?
Yes, absolutely. So this is so much fun. So set aside some time to really research and get digging, to determine those things. Consider like who your brand is and what your values are. Are you fun? Are you all business? Or are you like figuring out the personality of your brand? And then take a look at those fonts and colors and look at what conveys that message best. You can use for colors like Adobe Color Wheel, you can use Canva, color palette generators, like there are so many tools you can
Mhm.
use. And then for fonts, I would say Google Fonts or Adobe Fonts are some of the best go-tos because they're pretty universal, and chances are you'd be able to download them and use them in Adobe. They'll probably be in Canva, which is a really great place for brand standards. You can kind of create your own folder for that. And figuring out a way to put your stuff everywhere.
Mhm.
All
Yeah,
right.
that's
Ooh,
important.
here's a good question for you, Nicole.
Ooh.
I understand the importance of brand consistency, but how do I get my team, especially those who create content, to
Mhm.
adhere to the guidelines?
Yeah,
Ooh.
yep, consistency is key even among your internal team. So, one thing like we just talked about, you're going to want to make sure that your brand lines are written down and accessible to everyone. So we at Keystone Click, we use a shared Google Drive system. So we have a folder and kind of an intranet for all of our brand guidelines. You're going to want to have a formal training. So you're going to sit down and talk about all of the things that you need to show up in print and online and how those look. Um, templatizing all the things that you use pretty regularly. So for us, it would be social media templates, presentation templates, proposal templates. When we submit content deliverables to clients, they're all templatized as well so that everything is consistent. But most importantly, you're going to want to regularly check. When we have presentations or client submissions, we have at least 2 to 3 eyes on each thing that goes out between the accounts and creative team members. We had during our most recent quarterly meeting, Abby, who you've met before in previous webinars, is our digital content manager, did a formal presentation on what the new brand guidelines look like for colors and fonts and when to use them. So consistency is key, but also education and making sure that everyone has a stake in the success of your new branding initiatives.
Yeah.
So given that, Becky, you touch an awful lot of audience and client content and communication. So do you have any tools that you want to recommend to our audience that they might find useful?
Yeah, absolutely. I live and breathe by Canva. I
Yes, you
love
do.
Canva. You can create like a brand folder in
Mhm.
Canva. Do you want to minimize and show them
I
that
sure
part?
can.
Because this was created in Canva, this
Yes,
presentation.
we're not
So
sponsored by Canva, but we could
we are
be.
not sponsored, but uh,
Let me pull up our.
Canva is queen. So there's a little section that lets you create like a brand. So you can add your colors, you can add those headings,
Yep.
subheadings, body copy, you can add your logos, you can add brand voice. We don't have that yet, but photos, we have all of our headshots in there, our graphics, which are all of those really fun icons we talked about before. Icons, which are just fun little things we can throw in there to
Oh,
have
like
some
confetti.
personality. We have all of our numbers. So,
Yeah,
and
it's
then
all in a big template.
yeah, and we have multiple clients here at
Mhm.
Keystone Click, so we keep all of their brand stories under this as well. So we
Yep.
have them ready to go. And in Canva, you can create like a PDF with your like hex codes on it,
Mhm.
and all of those really interesting things. So you can literally just copy paste and put them in. A brand like a PDF of a brand guideline, I think is kind of one of those necessary things to just have on
And
all devices,
And
everything.
you
If
can even make them portable. So
you
Abby made this for
can.
everybody. So we have a little index card with shorthand with all of our information
Yeah,
on it.
we
So
have
we have it
handy
on the
dandy
go.
brand guidelines that we all have at our desk. Yeah. So just having that information at your fingertips at all times. So it's like, oh, I need to fix this document. What's the hex code for our light green? It's right there.
Yep.
Uh, so yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So we hope that you found today's insights valuable, learning about brand guidelines. It's, It's important. It's work. It's simple, but not easy, but it's very, very important, because your brand is not just your logo or your color palette. It's the actual embodiment of all of your values, your culture, and what you aspire to. So, this is the first step in deciding how you want to make a lasting impact with your brand. So, we also wanted to thank you for spending your valuable time with us this afternoon. And for those of us watching the replay, hi in the future.
Hello.
We like to invite you to a free consultation with any of our account managers to talk about whether it's time for you to build a brand guide. So you can use the URL that's listed here or scan the QR code that's going to take you right to the contact form on our website where you can admire our new visual branding.
Aw. All right, so we also want to invite you to our brand new webinar series, first of the year, first new webinar that kicks off on Thursday, January 25th at 1 p.m. Central Time to talk about when it's time to scale your business and the tools and tactics you'll need to navigate this next phase. We hope you join us.
Yes, it's going to be a really exciting year. So
Yes.
thanks again for being part of our webinar. If you have any questions or need assistance with any of your marketing efforts, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at Keystone Click. Any of the team members are here to help you to succeed. So you can contact me directly or Becky directly at our email addresses here, or please reach out and follow us on any of our social media channels. So thank you again for joining us. Have a fantastic day, and we wish you the best of luck on your journey towards business growth.
Yeah. Signing off. Have a good one.